Hi and welcome to my channel Galactic Bacon, and my video for you today is going to be an Elite Dangerous fuel scooping guide for beginners. And in one of my previous beginners guide videos someone pointed out that I was running very low in fuel, and yes, I do admit that, it's absolutely true. But then I have been playing this game for several years now, and I had judged that I could make my destination even with the low amount of fuel that I had left. However, I wouldn't advise beginners to let their fuel gauge drop as low as what I perhaps do sometimes in these videos. As a rule, I would say try and keep your fuel gauge at least half full. And if your fuel gauge drops below 50%, I would advise you to refuel at a station as soon as possible, especially if you're flying on some of the smaller ships in the game, which you probably will be if you're a beginner or you've just bought the game. Now, running out of fuel isn't necessarily a complete disaster, but you definitely want to avoid it if you can. You don't want to end up stranded somewhere. If you do run out of fuel, there is a player group called the Fuel Rats. They are worth contacting for help. It's not a service I've used before, but I know many other players who have called on them to help them out, and they do a great job and a great service to the Elite Dangerous community. But one of the best ways to avoid running out of fuel is to always have a fuel scoop equipped to your ship. And that means if you aren't near a station, you might be able to scoop a nearby star. Now, when you start off the game, the beginner ship, the Sidewinder, is not equipped with a fuel scoop. So you may have found, if you're flying about a few times, doing some missions, you have forgotten to check your fuel gauge. Maybe you've been caught short, or maybe you've taken things very close to the lower limit of what you can do. So that's the reason why I would advise you to always have a fuel scoop on your ship. So we're just going to dive straight into this, how to fuel scoop in any ship in Elite Dangerous. So I have my game open in front of me, and the first thing you're going to have to do is find a station that sells fuel scoops. Now, there's a website I've spoken about before, which is a great resource for Elite Dangerous, called eddbio or .io. If you head over there and you put in your reference system, I've put go to stations. First of all, click on stations at the top, and you'll come to this screen, and it gives you a filter. Type in the system you're currently in, then go to station sells modules and type in fuel scoop. Spell it should autofill these. Now, on a ship such as a Sidewinder, I have a number of size 1 slots. If you're on a bigger ship, then you may be able to fit some of the larger fuel scoops. But I guess if you're a beginner, maybe size 1, size 2, size 3 at a stretch is probably what you're looking at. But for most of you, if you're in a Sidewinder, it's going to be a size 1. The Class A is going to be your most expensive. Class B is going to be heavier than the next one down, and will also be less expensive than A. At this stage in the game, I personally prefer the Class C modules because they're affordable, they have good performance. If you're planning on doing a lot of combat, they're not as resilient as, say, Class D or Class B module, but they're in that sort of mid-range area. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look for a 1C fuel scoop, and I'm going to click on find stations, and it tells me all the stations where I will find one of these, and the top one just happens to be in the system I am currently in. Okay, there's another website I recommend highly. It's the EliteDangerousFandom.com wiki site. They have lots of great information on Elite Dangerous if you just look up fuel scooping. And they have a table. I will come back to this of star types, but if you go down to the bottom, they have a table of different types of fuel scoops and the rate at which they can scoop stars, their integrity level, which will tell you the higher the number, the better it's going to do in combat. That module will survive longer under combat if the integrity is higher. The lower number modules tend to be a bit more fragile. You may be more susceptible to losing that module if your shields go down, etc. So our 1C, class 1, C-rated module can scoop at 30 tons per second, and it costs 5,142 credits. So when you don't have a lot of money, these C modules are quite affordable. You'll see the A module is a lot more expensive, although that is the best you can get. If you can afford it, by all means put in an A rated module. That is certainly the best thing to do. But if you can't afford it, certainly I would say C is your best sort of mid-range bet for that. Okay, so I'll just go back to my ship. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going into Starport Services, outfitting, and you fit a fuel scoop under optional internal modules. Now at the moment I only have 2 class 2 slots. These other scanners and other stuff I've got in here I don't want to lose, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to swap out my refinery, which I have in there at the moment for mining, etc. I'm going to browse shop, I'm going to look for fuel scoops, and hopefully the one that the tool said would be here is here. So there's my 1C fuel scoop, so I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to store my old module. Now if you're a beginner in the game and you haven't tried buying any other modules, you may not have encountered this aspect of the game as yet. And what you can do is when you go to buy a module, you have 2 options. You can exchange the module for cash, which then goes into your account, or you can store the module, and it's stored in the local station you're in at the moment. Now if you're in another location in the game, you can actually request that module to be transferred to the station you may be in at that present time. So don't worry too much about where you're storing stuff. In an ideal world, it's best to store your modules in a station that you maybe call your base. It's your kind of home in a certain part of the galaxy. It is better to do that, but it's not absolutely necessary. And so I'm just going to store this module here for the time being. So I now have a fuel scoop. And also, if you noticed, when I was buying the fuel scoop, as I select different ones, it tells me what my power rating is going to be. Blue indicates an improvement in power draw. Red indicates that you're actually going to be drawing more power with that module. Fuel scoops don't actually use much power at all, so I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I haven't upgraded the power supply as yet on this ship, and I can run this fuel scoop quite happily. Also for this module, you do not have to allocate any special keys, so there is no fire group to allocate for a fuel scoop. Your ship will actually initiate the fuel scoop under certain conditions. We'll come to that later. So you need to be flying a certain distance from a star in order for the fuel scoop to be enabled. Okay, so we have a fuel scoop. We're going to launch. And I will just speed up this little part of the video for your benefit. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just stop my ship for a second. I don't want to get into trouble. I'm going to go back over to my wiki page, and on that same page that I showed you earlier, if you scroll up, it tells you which types of stars are scoopable. Now, not all of the stars in Elite Dangerous are able to be scooped for fuel. But there are a number of stars which you can scoop. Now, one easy way to find these stars is to set up the filter on your galaxy map and able to show you the stars that you can scoop. So to do that, go to the left hand panel, go to galaxy map, and we are going to the filter. Yeah, make sure you're on the realistic map in order to do this. Where are we? Okay, if you go click on the map icon, so you have the same menu as what I have, and then under the first drop down, you should be able to scroll through various different options. If you go down to star class, okay, and you will see a list of all the different classes of stars. Now, I think the default for this is that all of these will be checked, but what you will need to do is make sure the checks match up. Okay, so I'm going over to my game screen, and I'm going over to Galaxy Map. Click on the fourth icon along at the top, and then click on Map, so that the selection looks a bit like what I have at the moment. Okay, And then in your first drop down, you will have various different options. I think the default is usually economy, so that's what you may have it on at the moment. Scroll down till you find star class, click on that. Then it will show all the different star classes in the game. And what you will need to do is, I think all of these are checked as the default in the game. If you just double check that the only star classes which are checked are the ones that are scoopable, so you can check back to your wiki page. And so it's from O, B, A, F, G, K and M are our scoopable star classes. And that is what I have set up in my filter here. So if I go back, sorry. So if I zoom out, it means that all the stars which are visible at the moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to set a destination for a scoopable star within easy distance of my system. So let's pick this one. Okay guys, I wanted to show you this, which is a helpful feature. If you go to your filter in the Galaxy map and you look at your star class types and then go to the bottom and click on apply filter to route, it will route you through scoopable stars, which is a really helpful thing to have. And it will place a little icon. If I hover over this one, it says fuel star, and it says this is the last chance to scoop fuel en route to your destination. So that's a really handy little tip to know about. Okay. So I'm going to set a course, and okay, if you have arrived at a star and you're unsure of whether a star is scoopable, what you do is fly towards it, not directly to the center of it, but just above the horizon. Your ship will get hotter, but the fuel scoop hasn't enabled itself, so that is not a scoopable star. Yeah, I've just demonstrated what can happen if you get too close to a star and you are flying too fast. Your ship will begin to overheat. It's just a skill you're going to have to learn when you scoop stars, is to just watch your speed and watch how close you are to the particular star. So we're going to continue our journey onto the next system. Okay, now this is a star that we can scoop. If you have Super Cruise assistance, it will probably just bring you to a stop or to 30 kilometers per second when you arrive at a star. You're not going to be close enough in order to scoop it. What I will tend to do is just position the ship as if you're just heading for the horizon. You don't want to be heading for the center of a star like that, but just position your ship so that you're heading for the horizon so you don't get too close. Begin to increase your speed until you're approaching the star. When the fuel scoop starts to kick in, you could bring your speed right down to 30 kilometers a second again, and you'll continue to scoop and you will see the fuel gauge at the bottom is flashing blue. That means you're scooping fuel. When your fuel tank is full, it will tell you that fuel scooping is complete. You can't do any more scooping. And that is basically how it works. On larger ships with a larger fuel tank, it's obviously going to take more time to fill up. With smaller ships like this, you know, and a relatively fast fuel scoop, it's not going to take an awful long time. One of the things that I do in some of my bigger ships, you can actually, rather than stop and hover over a star as I'm doing just now, you continue to fly at relatively high speed around the star and then just scoop up as you're going. And I will see if I can, I'll demonstrate that by emptying my fuel tank as much as I can so that we can do a good bit of scooping. And so we'll do that next. I'll just demonstrate that other method, but if you're starting off, I recommend that you slow right down. You just let the fuel scoop do its thing, and then when you're moving away, be careful that you move away from the star and not down, you know, towards the star, or your ship's going to overheat. If your ship does overheat and you begin to panic, the best thing to do is to point your ship away from the star and just start to fly as far away from the star as you can. Your ship will begin to cool down eventually. You know, sometimes you may find that, you know, there's just too much damage done, your ship is overheating, and there's not an awful lot you can do in those situations. I mean, there are other ways of controlling your heat, but that's perhaps for a different video from this one. But if you're starting out and beginning in this game, it's best to just fly away from the star. I'll do that just now, and you'll begin to see my temperature gauge begins to go down. It should be in the 40s. Yeah. Yeah, so our ship is cooled right down again. Okay, I'm going to speed this next bit up for you. I'm going to look for another system. I will deplete my fuel, and then we will try and scoop around another star. Okay, so the moment I'm heading out to, I'm going to run down my fuel and then find another star that we can scoop. I can show you a slightly different technique than what we have looked at. Okay, so we're at a scoopable star. I'll see if I can demonstrate this for you by flying around the star, and then we scoop as we're flying around the other side, and this means that you can then just carry on your journey once you've scooped enough fuel. So I'm just moving my joystick down little by little. I'm just flying around the star. Yeah, you have to keep your eye on the fuel gauge with that technique, which I showed you there. I'll just wait till it cools down. If this does happen and your ship overheats, what to do is to go to your navigation beacon, select an object in the solar system you're currently in, doesn't matter what it is, just as long as you're flying away from the star, and then engage your frameshift drive once you're allowed to. change direction to the escape vector, and then you should hopefully be able to escape the star, and your ship will cool down. Okay, we did suffer some damage, but that can be repaired on our next station stop, but it kind of demonstrates what you would need to do if you find yourself in that situation. So I hope this video has been helpful to you in scooping stars. It will take you a little bit of practice, and you may have a few mishaps in the process, but it's a must-have module if you want to progress in this game. And especially on these smaller ships, you really need to be able to get fuel for all the journeys that you want to make. So if you're just starting out in Elite Dangerous looking for some guidance, you should check out my beginners playlist, and have that indicated just in the top right just now. Also, if you would like to be notified about future videos, please subscribe to my channel. Click the bell icon below if you want to be notified of future videos, and also check out the description below for I have a list of other videos in this series. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments if there's anything you want to ask, and thanks for watching. Fly safe, and I'll see you next time.